Despite always having the best team in the world, Team USA is not always able to win the gold medal in FIBA tournaments. There are many factors that affect these disappointments, such as the lack of chemistry or the pressure to perform at the highest level. But the difference with FIBA rules is one of the aspects that affects NBA players the most. There are a large number of rules that change on the other side of the pond, and some of them influence the game more than others. For example, the length of quarters is different. The lower scoring that typically takes place in European basketball is due in part to the fact that the total length of an NBA game is 48 minutes, with 4 quarters of 12 minutes each, while in European basketball the length of the game is 40 minutes, with 4 quarters of 10 minutes each. This aspect causes that the rotations of the teams participating in the tournament do not have to be so deep, since it is easier to distribute the minutes. However, other factors such as the number of fouls a player can commit also vary. In the NBA, a player can commit up to a total of 6 fouls in a game, 1 every 8 minutes. In FIBA, that ratio is maintained over 40 minutes of play, which means that a player who commits 5 fouls cannot continue the game. For this reason, for example, committing 3 fouls during the first half of the game entails a much greater risk for the end of the game. In addition, the NBA recently implemented rules to prevent the technique known as hack, in which teams intentionally foul players with low free throw percentages to gain an advantage. This rule now prevents fouling players without the ball in the last 2 minutes of each quarter, as the offense is punishable by a free throw in possession. However, in FIBA, you can make this kind of fouls without any punishment. Regarding the available timeouts, the rules are also quite different. In the NBA, teams have a total of 7 timeouts during the game, which, if not used, become a maximum of 4 in the last quarter. These timeouts can be requested by both coaches and players, as long as they have possession of the ball or the game is stopped. In addition, the duration of these timeouts can be extended up to 100 seconds for publicity purposes. Meanwhile, in FIBA, each team receives 5 timeouts which are distributed as follows: 2 in the first half and 3 in the second half. They can only be requested by the coaches of each team, and the duration is 60 seconds. These changes are not so important for the development of the game, but they can be vital in crunch time, when the teams need to stop the game more frequently. One of the differences that most favors NBA players over those who play in Europe is the distance from the three-point line. The NBA three-point line is 23 feet 9 inches from the basket at the top of the arc, and 22 feet at the corners. The FIBA three-point line is 22 feet, 1.75 inches from the basket at the top of the arc, and 21 feet 8 inches at the corners. These differences mean that there are certain shots that are considered long twos in the NBA, while in FIBA they are worth 3 points. And although the difference may seem insignificant, every inch at those distances is noticeable in terms of player efficiency. Another aspect that surprises the North American public has to do with basket interference and goaltending. In the NBA, once the ball touches the rim, it cannot be touched by any player until it leaves the rim or the cylinder above it. Any contact with the ball while it is on or within the rim or cylinder results in a basket interference violation, which awards 2 points or 3 in case of a three-pointer to the offensive team. In FIBA, once the ball touches the rim, it can be touched by any player, regardless of whether it is still on or within the rim or cylinder. Players can swat away or tip in shots that are on or within the rim or cylinder without any violation. This is something that is seen quite a lot, for example, during free throws. Although this rule causes curious situations, because if, for example, a player touches the ball to try to swat it away in a free throw, and it ends up going in, that shot not only counts but is worth 2 points instead of 1. Another rule change has to do with jump balls. In the NBA, a jump ball is thrown at the start of a game, and the one losing the initial jump ball gets possession to start the second and fourth quarters. On the other hand, the one winning the initial jump ball gets possession to start the third quarter. When a situation occurs in which 2 players fight for possession, another jump ball is thrown to determine the outcome of that possession, which sometimes causes very unbalanced situations in which a guard jumps with a center. On the other hand, in FIBA, as in the NBA, a jump ball is thrown at the start of the game. What changes is that the team losing the initial jump ball gets possession for the next jump ball situation, and in contested situations, the possession is awarded alternately between both teams. But beyond these changes, there are some changes that affect the game in a major way, because in the end, many of these measures do not affect the players so much, but the team management that coaches have to do. But there are especially two changes that are really important and directly affect the way in which the games are developed. The first one has to do with the 3-second zone rule. In both the NBA and FIBA, this rule is applied in the same way on offense. This means that no offensive player can stay in the restricted zone for more than 3 seconds. However, the rule changes with the 3 seconds in zone applied to the defensive side. In the NBA, no defending player can stay in the paint for more than 3 seconds without committing a violation that will be punished with a free throw. While in FIBA, this rule does not apply. This makes it much more difficult to attack the zone in FIBA tournaments, in addition to having much less space to generate advantages. Although it may only seem a detail, this rule is one of the reasons why in the NBA it is easier to score. And we know it firsthand, for example by the intervention of Luka Doncic in JJ Redick's podcast.
So you think it's harder to score 30 points in a EuroLeague game than it is in an NBA game?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'm just saying because of the rules.
Yeah.
Because the guy can stay. If you have a guy like, let's say, Rudy Gobert, he can stay in the paint on defense 3 seconds, however he wants. Just because of that rule, you can have 10 more points easily.
Another rule that has affected players a lot has to do with traveling violation. In the NBA, a player is allowed to take a gather step before taking 2 steps to complete a move. This means that a player can catch the ball or end a dribble while moving, then take 1 step to gather the ball, and then take 2 more steps to shoot, pass, or start another dribble. In FIBA, a player is only allowed to take 2 steps after catching the ball or ending a dribble, regardless of whether they gather the ball or not. This means that a player who catches the ball while moving must release the ball before the second foot touches the ground, or else it is a traveling violation. Also, in the NBA, a player who catches the ball while stationary can pivot on either foot, which means that a player can lift one foot and then put it back down before lifting the other foot, as long as they do not change their pivot foot. Meanwhile, in FIBA, a player who catches the ball while stationary must establish a pivot foot upon receiving the ball. This means that a player cannot lift their pivot foot and then put it back down before lifting the other foot, or else it is also a traveling violation. And finally, in the NBA, a player who falls to the floor while holding the ball can slide or roll without traveling, as long as they do not attempt to get up or gain an advantage. While in FIBA, a player who falls to the floor while holding the ball must maintain a pivot foot and cannot slide or roll without traveling. These changes lead to a large number of infractions throughout the championship, which usually remain anecdotes, but can become more important when it comes to important moments at the end of games. Players should work on these aspects during preparation to adapt their muscle memory and reduce these errors. Although the spectrum is changing little by little, it is true that the United States still has the best squad of the entire World Cup, even with a group of very young players. But with the rise of basketball and the globalization of the rest of the world's countries, maybe these changes will eventually bring those small advantages that make it possible to win the gold medal.